Today we're talking about labels, expectations, and finding alignment in your career despite those labels and expectations. I think it's a topic that all of us in some way have dealt with or are currently still dealing with it. Towards the end, we do also talk about comparison and how today's guest, Sam, has dealt with all of this stuff through the lens of her story. This is a one of us type episode, and in case you don't know what that means yet, you probably don't. It's a quarter lifer telling part of their story about a struggle or a problem that they've faced during these years and how they've overcome it themselves. The idea around these episodes is that all of us have dealt with a problem and overcome it in some way. And so if we can stack up enough of these, we can collectively create that clarity together, one story at a time. I think everyone's got a piece to this clarity puzzle we're trying to solve, and Sam's story is one of them. We do get into the specifics of her story, but for you, as you're listening to this, I would challenge you to question, what labels or expectations did I grow up with? And what am I maybe still holding on to today in terms of those labels or expectations from others? And how are they kind of maybe still holding me back today? It might not be with your career either. Like, that's what today's conversation is mainly about, is career. But don't be afraid to zoom out and look at this from all areas of your life. Today's sponsor is Matthew McConaughey's book, Green Lights. Sam loves reading more than the average person probably should. And so the sponsor is my favorite book, Green Lights. I like it because there's a lot of pictures and not a shit ton of words. Those are the books I kind of go for. But in all seriousness, it is a great book. It has a lot of great perspectives on life. And really the overall message is that even the tough stuff, the red lights, the hard stuff in life does eventually turn into a green light over time if we look at it through the right lens. Today's sponsor, Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. With that, thank you for being here and enjoy the episode. No matter who you are, we've all grown up with some sort of label or expectation. The athlete, the funny one, the smart one, the class clown, the shy one. Sam, what was your label growing up?
I was definitely the smart kid. In worse terms, the nerd, according to my sisters. No, but I always was that kid. I loved school. I loved to read. I never missed a day of school. I was the one that was like, I'm sick, but Mom, I want to go. What if something happens and I miss it? And my two sisters, they were the total opposite of me in that way. So I think of the three of us, that was just the label that I had, and it stuck till now.
You might be the first person I've ever heard say I loved going, like, a sick day was the greatest day in the world. All right. So with that, all right. So you were the smart kid. Shout out Alps, Stratford. So what came with that? What pressure, expectations came for you with that label of being the smart kid?
I feel like as a kid, it was definitely this like unspoken expectation that I was going to be that straight A student. When I got into the advanced learning program in fourth grade, that kind of just solidified that was the path for me. And it continued all the way through high school. Once I got to high school, I was making my schedule for the next year, and my dad was like, you're going to take APs, right? You're going to do the college credits. And of course I did. And I was smart and I loved to learn and I loved going to school. So it didn't bother me at that time. And then I think junior year of high school, when you start to look at colleges, there was no other option for me. I was going to a four-year school. My oldest sister, she went to pastry school. That was her passion. She loved to cook. She loved to bake. And she's all right with me saying this. She did not love school. She was not a great student. So I was the first one to kind of take that step and go to that four-year college. And I felt like I really didn't have a choice. Did I want to? Yes, I definitely wanted to. But even if I didn't deep down want to, I still think that was the path for me. So that's what I did.
Was there like a negative side to it? Because, right, you're getting labeled, you're the smart kid. Expectations, like, as much as it might not have felt like there was anything wrong with that, now that you're older, like, was there?
I think now looking back, I definitely feel like I had this weight on my shoulders and a lot of pressure to do really, really well. So even if I missed the smallest thing, like I didn't get the job, I didn't get the internship, I took those to heart so deeply because I just didn't want to be a disappointment because I felt like success was the only option. I couldn't fail. And I wanted to do well and I wanted to impress my family and my friends, but it definitely, I took things a lot harder than I think other people did, even if it was such a small mistake or such a small failure. I took that so deeply just because I was raised to be great. That was kind of the label I had was you're going to be successful, you're going to do great things. So if I felt like I wasn't doing that, I took it really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. And you were also, I mean, something you didn't say is you were the valedictorian in high school and college, which is like hard to do. And I say that because, right, you lived up to those expectations, high school and college, like that's hard to do. And so with those expectations of being great, it was probably career focused, was it not?
It was definitely career focused. I think that's why I ended up becoming a business major. I had originally started out as a psychology major, and sorry, Dad, I'm going to throw you under the bus for a second. But I remember him saying, "What are you going to do with a psych degree?" And at the time, I was just super passionate about people's behavior. I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. I was super into true crime. So that's what I had initially applied for. But then in talking to friends and family, I kind of was like, is that the smart route? Like, is that going to get me the best job out of school? So I switched my major over to originally economics. That wasn't for me. Landed in marketing. That's what my degree is in. But I just felt like I had to get the degree that was the most practical, even if it wasn't the one that I was the most passionate about.
Yeah. And I think to take a step back with this whole conversation that we're about to have, I think, you know, expectations are, like, I looked it up before this. Expectations are a belief that someone will or should do something. It kind of ties in what we talked about on last week's episode of beliefs. But we all have expectations on us, right? For Sam, it's the being the smart kid, having this success of a great career, and being at the top of her class, which she achieved, and all this stuff. But it's also it's acting a certain way. It's I have to achieve this by a certain time, by a certain age, and I have to do certain things because of how old I am. Like all these things, you know, tie into expectations and why we're having this conversation. And I think why it's such a problem is because those expectations do show up in what we do, in our decisions that we make, right? And as I was thinking about this, as we were kind of preparing for this, I realized that I think there's two things that expectations do to us. They either cause us to settle in order to meet that expectation. So, like an example, we settle for a relationship that's maybe not like the best one that we could get, or a career that's maybe not the best. And it's just good enough, right? Or on the flip side, we give in to those expectations, we don't submit to those expectations, and then we feel like a failure, right? Because we haven't met the expectation. And so we internalize that. It's a shit show, right? And so, again, like before we really dive in, I just want to hit on the importance of why we're having this conversation. And I think where this is headed is both those options of listening to the expectation and not listening to the expectation. They're both bullshit, and there is a third option. And so I think that's kind of, what we're going to explore with this conversation. And so, Sam, for you kind of touched on it with your path, but, just to hit on that a little bit more, like, how did those labels, those expectations play into your career path specifically?
Yeah, so I spoke about earning my bachelor's degree. I ended up in a marketing major. That's what my degree was in. But then I was actually graduating one semester early. So I kind of, at that time, I knew I was on track to graduate early. I wasn't ready to jump into the real world quite yet. So I was like, well, I guess I'm going for the master's degree. And my parents pushed for that. They thought it was a great idea. So I went right into my MBA program. I was actually taking graduate business classes, what would have been the fall semester of my senior year. So I was jumping right in. And at the time, that sounded great. Staying in school, earning another degree. I got to stay at the same college that I was at. I had the same professors. I liked the work. Looking back now, would I have chosen a different path? Most likely. I took out thousands and thousands of dollars of money to get that master's degree. So I definitely feel a little different about it now. But I think at the time that was just the expectation. I had graduated as valedictorian, and it was like, well, of course you're going to go get a graduate degree. So that's what I did.
And I think a lot of people do that, by the way. Like, I used to work with college kids, and I just feel like everyone just gets their MBA just because I'm not ready to go out into the real world yet. So, yeah, let's just get this other thing that looks good that I don't even know really what it is. But yeah, it's like more points for just following the path, right?
And especially now, I think I remember when I was in high school and I was meeting with a guidance counselor about what I was going to do post graduation. Like I said, my parents, everyone around me, the 4-year college, that was the expectation. There wasn't really another they didn't preach another option at the time. That was the one that was handed to me.
Yeah.
They said, you're a 3.9 student, you're in the top 10 of your class, you're going to college. So that's what I did. And so now I think when I earned that bachelor's degree, that almost felt like, oh, all right, like, did that easy. So how can I set myself apart? You have to go get the master's degree. I didn't even think about it. I was like, this is the only logical option. But looking back now, I think it would have been great to take maybe a few years and think about what I would have wanted to study further and then make that decision. It's like when they ask you to choose your major when you're a junior in high school, you have no idea what you want to do. And that was kind of my same thought process then too.
All right, so you're following this path, right? You get the undergrad, you do get the MBA, right? Took another year. At any point throughout that, are you like questioning things at all? Like, does it feel like, yeah, I'm doing everything right, I'm checking these boxes, but I don't know if I want any of this? Like, did you think about that at all?
I definitely did. And this might be a really cliche answer, but my junior year of college in the spring semester, I studied abroad in Ireland. And it was right at the time that the pandemic was starting. But pre pandemic, when I had first arrived, I just remembered meeting all of these people from all of these different countries and all of these parts of the world. And they were doing such cool things and they were so passionate about what they were studying and what classes they were taking while they were abroad. And I kind of just went abroad for the fun. I was like, I'm just going to come here, take some cool classes, see Europe. I'd never been before. But I remember one of my Swedish friends, she was actually 28 years old at the time. So she had taken a few gap years, au paired in the US for a few years. She spoke 3 languages. And I just was like, what am I doing? Like, that was the thoughts that I had at the time. And it definitely made me feel a little different when I came back to the States, especially during COVID. During that time, all I had time to do was think about what I was going to do next. And that was definitely eye-opening for me. I just felt like I didn't have that passion. At that point, I think I'd already done 2 to 3 internships in marketing, and I still wasn't really feeling like this was what I wanted to do. But at that point, I was 1 semester away from graduating. I wasn't changing anything at that point. But I think going abroad and kind of living in that bubble during quarantine, I had a lot of time to think. And that was kind of when I realized, is this what I want to do? And when I started questioning things.
Yeah, I think it's interesting you bring up COVID because I think like that's when I had that same realization. And I think it's because like you're forced to slow down, right? You're forced to literally sit and kind of do nothing and just think about life. At least that's what I did. And you're kind of saying the same thing. And I think just like a little bit of a tangent here, but I think it's important. I think it's still important to do that now, right? Because now, like, pandemic over, we're busy, busy, busy all the time now. And it's like, how often do you have that check in, like that reflection of just like, is this actually what I want? or am I just doing a thing to check a box, right? Um, and so, all right, so you're kind of starting to question maybe a little bit based on this experience. You come back. Um, is that when you kind of entered like the real world?
Yeah.
Okay. And at this point, enter the real world. You're like, all right, time to fucking go. Like, you better be that super successful person. Um, were you still holding on to that pressure? Was that kind of your mindset of like, all right, here we go?
It definitely was. When I finished my undergrad degree, I actually decided to stay in my college town for the summer. Again, it was the pandemic. Jobs were really, really hard to find at that time. So I stayed in my college town for the summer. I nannied to make money, but I was obviously job hunting that entire time and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. When I moved back home at the end of the summer, my mom was like, all right, you've got to find a job. You go look. So that's kind of where I was at that point. And I remember just looking on Indeed and looking on LinkedIn and reading job descriptions for marketing roles. And I was like, none of this is what I really want to do. I had done so many internships by that point, and I didn't hate them, but there were aspects of each of those roles that I didn't like. So I knew what I didn't want, but at the time I wasn't sure what I was really looking for. And I sort of stumbled upon higheredjobs.com, and I was like, oh, I could work at a college. I like school. I'm the smart kid. I'm a nerd. This is going to be great. So I was scrolling through there, and one of the colleges in Connecticut, they were hiring for a social media manager for their university accounts. And I was like, social media, fun. It's marketing. Like, I think it'd be a good foot in the door. So I applied. Again, it was COVID, so we had a virtual interview. It went really well. I came in for the in-person interview. I got the job that day. At the time, I was so happy. I was so excited. I started, I think it was only 2 weeks later because I was an eager beaver. I had no job. So I was like, I'll start right away whenever you want me.
Yeah.
And that was I think, at that time, I was like, oh, okay, maybe I can use my marketing degree. And I found something that I liked. And for a while it worked, but then it didn't.
And how long were you there for in that first job?
I was there for about a year and a half. Honestly, I want to say it was about 9, 10 months in that I started thinking, okay, this isn't what I want to do anymore. Especially if you're anyone that's worked in social media before, it can be really, really draining, and you're online 24/7. And yes, I was 22 at the time, so that was great. I was online anyway, but I was ready to grow. I was ready to do new things, and there wasn't really a place for me to grow within my department at the university. So I kind of had no choice but to start looking elsewhere. I was having some difficult relationships with some of my colleagues and my manager at the time, so it just made sense to start looking for something new. So at that point, I was back on the job hunt. I felt like I had just been doing that, but we were back to square one. At that point, I was like, well, maybe I'll do something different. I won't work at a university. I'm in marketing. It's time to go work for an agency. That's what everyone told me that I should have been doing. So I started looking. I found a job that was actually an enrollment marketing agency. So it was agency work, but we were working with colleges and universities. So I was like, this is perfect. It's the best of both worlds that I'm looking for right now.
Yeah.
I had a hybrid schedule at the time, so I could stay home a few days a week, only go in a couple days a week. And that was perfect for what I needed then. And so I stayed in that agency job for about a year and a half. Again, about a year in, I realized this is not what I want to do. The agency work was not for me. The bouncing between clients, learning different brands, I knew that's what I knew that wasn't what I wanted anymore. So again, I was back to square one. And I remember I got a call from my manager, and she was like, "Do you want to go to this conference with me?" And I was like, yeah, I've never been to a conference before. Let's do it. So we hopped on a plane to Las Vegas, and we went to this higher education conference. So we were on the vendor side, and all of the attendees were other like deans and student life professionals that worked at colleges and universities. And I remembered sitting there at the booth with my manager, who had also worked in higher ed for about 25 years before coming over to the agency side. And I was just sitting there like, I'm on the wrong side of the booth. Like every time I was having conversations with people, I wanted to be in their shoes. I wanted to be back on the college campus. I wanted to be doing what I felt was meaningful work, working with students, and just being directly involved in that campus life. So I think I got home from the conference and the next day was back on higheredjobs.com and was searching for jobs at another college or university.
It's funny you say that because it reminds me of, Alex. Shout out Alex if you're listening, buddy. He did the same thing. He's a coach now, but he did the same thing. He was up in the stands watching a baseball game, working at it for like selling tickets or something. And he was like, I want to be on the field. Like, and then he got into coaching. And I think a lot of people kind of have those similar aha moments of, you see yourself in this different role on the other side, tables are turned, and it's like, no, I want to be over there. And so kind of in all that, right, you have to take a step back, zoom out a little bit. You have, right, you graduate, again, still dealing with these expectations to be great, by the way. You graduate, you start job number one in higher ed, go to the agency, and then now you're kind of at the point where I kind of want to go back to higher ed, and you're kind of job jumping a little bit, right? So, but what did doing that kind of teach you maybe about yourself, about what you wanted?
I think at the time, I more so knew what I didn't want to do. I had done so many jobs at that point. I had finally started to narrow down what I wanted to do, but it really was a process of elimination to figure out what I didn't want to do first. But I was scared because looking at my resume, I had only been at my first job for about a year and a half. Now I was only at my second job for not even, I think it was maybe a year and 8 months at that point. And I remembered calling my mom and saying, Mom, I think I want to switch jobs. And she was like, oh, you're job hopping. Your generation and job hopping.
Yeah.
But I just was like, I don't want to be stuck. And at that point I knew I couldn't do the agency work anymore. I had to switch it up and do something new. But I was definitely scared about what other people would think. I was scared to call my dad and tell him I was switching jobs again. Because I think, you have your bachelor's degree, you have your master's, you did all that. You should know what you want to do in your career by that point. And I didn't, which I was only 24 at the time. So that's so young.
Yeah.
But to have already had 2 full-time professional jobs by 24, it was a little.
And you had your MBA.
And I had my MBA. So it was a little crazy, and I was scared, but I think in the end the risk paid off, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, so you mentioned like process of elimination, right? I think one, like a lot of what you just said too, all expectations, right? You talk to your parents, you talk to anyone, they're like, I don't know, dude. I don't know if you should change jobs again. Like, what is that going to do to you? And there's a generational difference there too, which ties into all this. But there's an idea that I really like that ties into, just process of elimination, especially for figuring out what you want to do. And it's being directionally correct versus absolutely correct. And there's this quote from Alex Hormozy to kind of hit on that. He says, most people are trying to find the perfect answer when they have no perspective from which to make a judgment. They're trying to find the perfect thing to do, and they haven't done anything. So why would you have perspective to make a judgment, right? So basically, to unpack that a little bit, to me, when I think of, all right, we in our 20s should be optimizing for directionally correct, not absolutely correct. It's like your dream life, your dream job, whatever is in front of you, but there's 20 different options. There's 20 tunnels that you could enter. And you can either sit there and think about it, which one is it? Which one's the perfect tunnel? And they all look the same. And you can just kind of waste time just sitting there thinking, overthinking it. Or you can just start with tunnel number 1, climb in it, do it for a year, kind of like you did, come out, hit the pause button, evaluate, and you can kind of cross tunnel number 1 off the list. But not only that, I think you could cross number 8 off maybe number 13, maybe number 19, right? Because of that experience, you can kind of know, like, all right, well, there was some things that were good about this, there were some things that were bad. And all right, now let's go through tunnel number 2. And you do that for a year. Again, kind of like you did. It's like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff that I don't want to do about this. All right, cool. I can cross off number 2, number 4, number 9, number 11, number 15, and number 20. And now you're left with 7 options, right? And that's kind of, I think, to me, how we should view like figuring out what to do, who we are. It's like, just do shit, man. Just do it, and you will figure it out as you go. And I think you'll come out on the other side, just process of elimination. I know I don't want that. And you just do that enough times. By the time you're 30, 32, right? You still have 30 years left of your career. Like, I would argue that's what your 20s is for that process of elimination. And so at the agency, did you feel stuck? Like, did you know at the time you're still there? Like, did you know it wasn't it, but you just maybe didn't know what to do? Like, what did that feel like?
I think in the beginning, I mean, when you start a new job, you almost are looking at everything with like these rose-colored glasses. But like I said, about 9 months in, I started being like, ugh, is this really what I want to do? I was in so many meetings. I was kind of at the behest of other people. I couldn't be as creative as I thought I was going to be in that role. So I kind of was like, huh, this isn't really what I want to do. And like I said, going to that conference with my manager, that was kind of my aha moment of I don't want to be in this job anymore, but I still felt stuck. I think it was about still 3 months after getting home from that conference before I actually applied to any other jobs, because I kept going back and forth like, am I going to be seen as a failure? Are my friends going to judge me? Is my family going to judge me? Like, I keep job hopping. I have to just stay in one place. So I kept making these pro cons list of leaving the job, staying in the job. And I think at the 3 month mark after getting back from that conference, I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. At that point, I was remote for, I think, 5 days a week. I was only going in maybe once or twice a month. And I was getting really sick and tired of being at home. I felt like I didn't have as much of a connection with my colleagues. We were out of the pandemic, but I almost felt like I was back in quarantine because I did the same thing every single day, and I was home all day long. But I eventually bit the bullet. I sent in some applications. But yeah, it took me about 3 months to actually even hit submit on any application because I was really scared to switch jobs for the 3rd time right after graduating college.
So in the midst of that too, are you like, just to hit on being stuck for a minute, because I think a lot of people are kind of there. Did you, like, before you got to that point where it's like, all right, I definitely don't want to do this, but even before you start looking for jobs, are you feeling stuck? Are you afraid because of what people might think of you? Like, you mentioned that. But was it also like, I don't know what to do now? Like, I literally don't know what job to look for.
Definitely. I think it was a mixture of both. A lot of, I was worried about what other people were going to think of me, but I didn't know what else to do because at the time I was like, I've worked at the college already. I didn't love that. Now I'm at the agency that this is what marketing professionals do, and I still don't love this. Like, I didn't even know where to look, honestly. And so that was really tough for me. I remember it was weeks on end and I was looking on these job boards, but nothing was coming out at me. Nothing was what I wanted to do. And that's another reason why it took me about 3 months to even hit submit on an application, because there was just nothing I wanted to do. And it just felt like I was in the same cycle every day of waking up. I didn't want to go to my meetings. I didn't want to do the job. I was just waiting for Friday at 4 p.m. so that I could have my weekend and then get the Sunday scaries. But yeah, I definitely was in this kind of just perpetual kind of cycle. I was stuck in my head. I didn't know what to do.
Do you think it was kind of because you're dealing with the expectation of, I got a degree in marketing, I got my MBA, right? Like, I am still that smart kid that's supposed to like be moving forward in my career, maybe not doing all this bumpy job changing and stuff, like, did those expectations play a factor in that stuckness as well?
Absolutely. I think I was like, well, if I'm going to change jobs, it better be for a better job. Like I can't take a title demotion or anything like that. So I was really second guessing everything at that point. Cuz everything I was looking at, anything with a manager title or marketing, kind I don't know. There's so many jobs you can do in marketing too, and I think that's another reason why I felt so stuck because that's such a broad degree. There's so much you can do with that. And with that many options, like we were talking about, it can be very overwhelming.
Hmm.
And at that point, all I'd done was figure out what I didn't want to do, but I didn't know what I actually wanted to do. And I had all this pressure, everyone around me to kind of was pushing me to do something more, something bigger, something better, but I didn't know what that was. I just knew that they wanted me to be successful. So it was hard.
All right. So eventually you do overcome all of that, right? And so tell me about where you're at now.
So I'm back to working out of college, which I was very happy about. So kind of in that stuck period, once I started applying for jobs and looking, I ended up back on higheredjobs.com because I took time to think, what is it that I really, really want to do? Where can I make a difference? What matters to me? And at that point, I realized I want to be in that education space. I consider myself a lifelong learner, and there's no better place to be that thing than at a university on a college campus. So I went back to the drawing board, and I now have my new job, which is in the dean's office at a local university near me, and it's not marketing. So I definitely took a leap of faith in applying for that. I remember hitting submit on my application and I was like, there's no way they're going to call me. My background, my experience, my degree does not align with this role at all. But I got the call to come in for the interview. And they were impressed. I loved everything they had to say. I love everything this university stands for. It aligns with my values, my beliefs. And it's doing something very different than what I was doing before. I'm using more of my MBA background, which is great. So I guess that wasn't a total waste of earning that degree, but it's not in marketing. I'm really doing kind of administrative work, faculty things.
Well, like you're trying a different tunnel, right? Like we talked about, which is cool. Like you kind of did, all right, well, I've done all this marketing stuff. Let's maybe try not doing it, right? So like I think you kind of did that and right shed some of those expectations, those labels of I have to be in marketing or else. And you kind of like, all right, let's just try this other thing and see what happens. And so you're happier, you're more aligned with kind of what you believe you're kind of called to do?
Definitely. And I took a bit of a pay cut and a little bit of a title demotion, but that wasn't what I cared about at the time. I just remember going onto the campus and speaking with the woman who's my now manager, and I just had this feeling of like, I think this is it. And I love all of my colleagues. I love my team. It's a lot more in line with what I want to be doing every day. There's a path for me to grow, which I didn't have at my initial university. So I'm playing the long game there. But I love what I do now. And I wouldn't have gotten here if I hadn't done those last two jobs. So in the end, the path led me to where I needed to be.
Most people, I don't think, would probably have the courage to kind of do what you did, right? Of taking a step back, taking a pay cut, like a lesser job on paper, right? Because, right, like you said, like the expectations of growing not growing, but getting that next rung on the ladder, making more money. If you're not making more money, you're failing, right? And so how did you, I think a lot of people are there. I think a lot of people have that mindset, those beliefs, those expectations that they're handling. And what you did was kind of said like, no, man, I'm going to do what's good for me. I'm going to try this thing and see what happens. So how did you detach from all of those expectations, right? Even to go back to growing up the smart kid, the valedictorian, the marketing person, like you got rid of all that kind of in one move.
It definitely wasn't easy. I definitely had a lot of kind of self guilt and a disappointment in myself that I was kind of taking a step back in what others, I mean, no, to me, it was a step forward. Others, I think
Hmm.
it would be considered a step back.
Yeah.
But I think that's just that. I started to kind of flip my mindset and think about what are my priorities? What do I care about in a job? What do I care about in life? And to me, that wasn't a title that isn't money. It's waking up every day, being excited to go to work, enjoying what I'm doing, feeling like I'm making a difference. And when I go home at 4:30, I'm not really thinking about work. I have funny stories to tell from the day, but I'm not stressed. I definitely have that work-life balance that so many people say they're looking for, but I feel like I do actually have that. But it took a while for me to get there, and to kind of let go of that guilt of quote not meeting expectations that were set upon me. Like my grandma, for example, she came to visit me at work. And I remember the first thing she said to my colleagues was, "Oh, did you know that Samantha was the valedictorian of her college?" And I know she's so proud, and she's my grandma, so she can say whatever she wants. But I do wish that that wasn't always the first thing that people say about me, because I'm not really in a role that you would think the college valedictorian would be in right now.
Hmm.
So anytime that that's brought up, I always kind of have this weird feeling. But I kind of just, I've learned to let that go, and just let people be proud of me for the things that I have accomplished, but also kind of thinking about myself in a different way.
Hmm.
I'm not just that smart kid. I'm not just the college valedictorian. I'm a lot of other things. And those are the things that matter to me. So I think once I was able to kind of flip my mindset in that way, I'm a lot happier now. And that's not to say that I don't want to grow. I might earn another degree. Who knows? I can do it for free at the college. So perks of working at a university. But like I said, I'm a lifelong learner. I know I'm going to grow. I'm going to learn. I'm going to keep doing those things. So we'll see where the rest of the path takes me.
Yeah, and I think another way to think about just like shedding expectations, right? How do we actually do that? Because again, I think a lot of people are there. I think one, kind of like you said a couple times, expectations come from a lot of the people that are around us, especially the ones that are closest to us, like our parents, our grandparents, our best friend, Bobby, Susie, whoever it might be. And I mean, just a couple things there. Like, I think, your parents, your grandparents, especially them, some people just grew up in a different time period than you did. They were 25, 30 years ago. And there's a different worldview that just comes with that, right? So sometimes those expectations are coming from someone who has just lived a different life than you. So there's one. Um, I also think, right, a lot of this ties into beliefs and expectations, right? But those people, anyone that puts an expectation on you, they also just have had different experiences than you have had, right? And because of that, again, their worldview is different than yours, right? So for you, you know, leaving a good paying job to kind of take a demotion, anyone, like, especially like our parents who are, maybe 50s, or my parents are like in their 60s, like money growing up was very, very important to them. And so, again, there is kind of that disconnect. And so, I think, someone else also might have had a similar experience of, hey, I left a good paying job 20 years ago and it was one of my biggest regrets. So, Sam, you shouldn't do that. Don't do that, right? And the reality is that that's just an experience. It doesn't mean that's going to be the same thing that's going to happen to you. And lastly, just on top of all of that, if none of that like checks the box for how to get over expectations, like everyone's literally and figuratively different than one another. DNA is different, mental constructs, different bodies, experience, gifts we've been given, right? Like all those things, I think, do, you know, are things that you have to think about when you kind of feel those labels on you or those expectations from others. A lot of the time, it comes from a good place too. It comes from those people that love you and want the best for you. But I think there is a difference, and sometimes a disconnect. And I think where we can get stuck is when we see all of these seemingly kind of unimportant expectations or labels that were given by other people, and they all kind of stack up. There's 7 expectations from all these people of telling you you're smart and you're this and you're that. And at the end of the day, they don't really matter, but there's 7 of them and they all stack up, and it's all just doesn't, it's a house of cards, right? And I think those are just a few things to think of, of how do we get over these expectations. And something else on that too, just to close that thought, I think verbalizing your expectations are important. It's like, just say to yourself, I'm not doing, or I am doing blank because my mom, my dad, my best friend expects me to blank, right? Like if that were you, like it would probably be, I am staying in a marketing job because whatever, all the people around me think, oh, I have the expectation of being a marketing person or the smart person, right? Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. And I think, like you said, like my parents, for example, my mom, she got a job right out of college, I mean, right out of high school. And she's been in that job for 25 years. And my whole life, she's jokingly said, I want to do this when I grow up. I want to do this when I grow up. And I'm like, you're already a grown up, mom. You could have made those changes before. So I think in her mind, she is proud of me for kind of finding my way and finding something that I love. But I think she is kind of apprehensive because she knows how tough it can be to kind of job hunt and move around, and she's had a stable job for 25 years, and that's worked for her. And same with my dad. He's been in his job for almost 25 years now too. So both of my parents, they just never were the job hoppers, so they can't really understand where I'm coming from. So I think that's tough. But like you said, if I verbalize that and say, I'm doing this just because my mom or dad wants me to, when you say it out loud, you realize how ridiculous it sounds. So it was hard to kind of let that go, but it was worth it.
Yeah, because you realize, all right, dude, do I want to live their life or do I want to live my life? And like eventually, I think when you kind of live that someone else's life long enough, kind of like you did, you get to a point where it's like, all right, enough is enough. Like, let me kind of take over here. Like, appreciate it, guys, but it's my turn. And so, just to go back to your story and kind of where you're at now, right? You feel more aligned with who you are, with what you want to do. You shed those expectations, right? You're kind of, over the hump of all that stuff. But I think it does touch on another key, like important quarter lifer issue, which is comparison, right? Because, and they go hand in hand. Comparison goes hand in hand with expectations. But I think, right, you've taken a lesser job, right? Has comparison, because of that decision, has that affected you at all?
Absolutely. I think looking at my friends, I have some friends who are in incredibly impressive jobs. And I always find myself being like, oh, when we talk about work and I hear the things they're doing versus what I'm doing, you can't help but feel a little bad about yourself. But I kind of just have learned to let that go. We each had different callings in life. So I have friends who knew from the time they were 5 that they were going to be a teacher, and that's what they're doing now, and they're so great at it, and that was their calling. I have other friends who were born to be nurses, and that's what they do, and they're amazing at it, and they excel in their jobs. I have friends that went into politics, others that went into criminal justice, and I think once you kind of realize we're all put here to do something different, you stop comparing yourself to them. And I know that there's things that they probably compare themselves to me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, well, I guess I never thought of it that way. Like we're all kind of just comparing ourselves to each other. And it's super normal and super natural to do. I'm probably going to do that for the rest of my life, but I don't think about it that deeply anymore. At the end of the day, most of my friends are my college friends. So we all went to school together. We earned our degrees together, and we're all doing something different. And not to say one's better than the other. We're just all on different paths. But some days I definitely wake up and I'm like, oh, wow, my best friend has a doctorate and I don't. But that's not what I was meant to do. So you kind of just have to let that go.
And I think it's too understanding that like there's seasons to life. Like this is just right now, right? Like Sam in 2 years could be saying something completely different. You're like, all right, I want to like be that boss bitch again. Like, you know what I mean? Like there's flexibility, there's room to change your mind too. I think that's important. And another thought just on that is like kind of like you said, like everyone's playing a different game. And I think we're going to talk about this in episode 8 of just comparison and like the fact that literally every single person is playing a different game. And yet we look around and I look at the game that you're playing of whatever it might be, career, relationships, life. And I think, wait, Sam's doing that. I should be doing that. Right. But on the flip side, you're saying you've kind of gotten to a place where it's like, again, like you stay in your lane. My lane is my lane. Because like, honestly, we're the exact opposite, right? Like to me, career is very, very, very important right now. And that's the game that I'm playing. But at the same time, you're engaged, you have a house, I'm living at my parents and like, just like working my face off. Right. So I think that's kind of why your 20s is pretty cool because everyone's off doing different things. And I think when you realize everyone doing their own thing is just, everyone's in their own lane. We're all running a race, but it's like the races are different. Like we're all doing a different event.
Yeah, like using that game analogy, I think in our heads, we think we're all different pieces on the same board, but really we're not even on the same board. We are all playing a different game.
Yes.
And like you've said, I've just realized I have friends who are pregnant. I'm going to a baby shower soon from one of my college best friends. I have another friend who I just traveled for her wedding, another friend who just spent 9 months traveling in Australia. And we're all doing very different things. And when I think about it and I look at it, I'm like, that's such a beautiful thing that being 25 or I'm 26 now, there's no right way to do things. And I think once you kind of accept that and you're open to that, then you stop feeling that guilt and that pressure to do what everyone else is doing, and take a break from social media because a lot of that is a lie. And you think, oh, that person's doing that. That looks so cool. That's so great. But it's all tailored to what you want to see. So I think when you take a break from that and you kind of just think about what you're doing, what you've accomplished, take 5 seconds at the end of the day and think about, oh, I did that today. Even if you went on a walk around the neighborhood, great, you moved, you did something fun. And that's what I've been doing recently is kind of just taking a step back from all of that and not looking at what everyone else around me is doing and just being happy and content with where I'm at and being more present. Because I think I'm always looking to the future or harping on the past. As my therapist said, I need to just be here. And once you do that, then honestly, life's pretty great.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, that's awesome. And I think like you're focusing on more like the outside of work stuff kind of right now too. And building your life, like you're not like a super careerist right now again. And I think that's just important because that's kind of countercultural, right? That's not normal. Sam, you're not supposed to be doing that. You're 26. You're super smart. You're supposed to be out there trying to be a CEO, right? And you're kind of saying, no. Like, that's all you guys saying that I have to do this. I should be this person. And right now that I'm not. But you're still aligned with, you feel like you're in the right place. You're where you kind of need to be, which is awesome. All right, so last thing I want to ask you, and I'll give you an option of answering one of 2 questions. So number 1 is kind of more of an advice question. If someone listening right now, in their 20s, maybe feels stuck like you did, or is chasing something that they feel like they should want, maybe based on expectations or labels, what would your advice be to them? Or question number two, if you could sit down with yourself right after you kind of graduated college, got the MBA, and went out into the real world, what would you say to Sam of 4 years ago?
Honestly, I feel like the advice that I would give myself at that time is also the advice that I would give to everybody else. The biggest one being you have time. Like, we are only in our 20s. There is so much life that you still need to live. So don't stay miserable. Don't stay in a job you hate just because you're scared to take a risk and do something else. You have so much time to make a mistake. In my eyes, your 20s is when you should be making mistakes and learning from your failures. And don't let that guilt and that comparison to other people keep you from making what others would consider a risky move. I think I found myself still comparing myself to my friends. I was like, oh, well, they've grown in their jobs and I'm going to leave mine for the third time. But once I let that go, I made a great decision for myself. And you can change careers. You can change your mind. It's so normal to change your mind. I change my mind about what I want to eat for breakfast as I'm making it. So it's fine to pivot. It's fine to make that change. And that's really my biggest advice. And if you're stuck trying to think of what you do want to do, maybe take a step back and think about, what do I not want to do? Because for me, that really helped. I'm a pros cons list. That's kind of what I always do when I'm trying to make a hard decision. But when it came to finding what I wanted to do as a career, I more so knew what I didn't want to do. More than what I wanted to. I still don't really know exactly what I want to do, honestly. I can't sit here in confidence and say that I'm doing the job that I'm going to keep for 20 years. I cannot say that with confidence. Do I want to grow in my role and grow at the university? Absolutely. I know what I don't want to do, but I'm open to ideas. And I think just being open-minded, being flexible, that's going to help you a lot more than kind of staying stuck.
Yeah, I think we need to normalize that whole conversation around literally that we're not supposed to have it figured out, man. I'm 26, I'm 28, I'm 29, like fucking 31, dude. I don't know. Like there's so much time left. Like go follow Gary Vee and see what he has to say about time. He will say like we're going to live till like 110 and like you're going to work for the next 50 years. So like I think what you're saying, like that process of elimination is so important because if you can just, it's the tunnels thing again, but if you can just get the wrong ones out of the way and then it's like finding gold on a treasure map. You finally find the gold of what that thing really, really is by the time you're, I don't know, 32, 35, whatever. And it's like, all right, well, I'm going to dig here as deep as I can and just go hard at this thing because this is it right now. But yeah, I think those expectations are so important to release, to get rid of, and realize that it's all from external forces that really at the end of the day don't matter.
And it's your life. Like at the end of the day, like when I was struggling with what I wanted to do and I was trying to get advice from my mom, my dad, my grandparents, my siblings, at the end of the day, they're not living your life. So if you're unhappy, then you need to make a change. Don't let others tell you what should make you happy. And I think once I let that go and I became more in line with what do I want out of my life? What am I passionate about? What do I want to do? Then I found those answers. Once I stopped, it's great to ask for advice. We're doing this podcast.
Yeah,
it's
right.
great to ask for advice, but don't let that dictate your decisions because you can get a million different answers from a million different people. So at the end of the day, it's what you want to do, and you're the only person that's going to live your life. So do what makes you happy, and if it means taking a pay cut and taking a step back, do it. Honestly, it's worth it.
And cut. Thank you for being here, for listening to the entire episode. And if you're still here, I want to invite you to join an anonymous Reddit community that I've started for us to take these topics, these ideas, and have more of a conversation about them together. It really would mean a lot to me for you to join this, especially now as Quarter Life Clarity is really just getting started. there's a link in the podcast description that'll take you to that community. All you got to do is click on it, create an account, and then participate in the discussion. And again, it is anonymous. It's free. I post in there twice a week, so you can get some more kind of behind the scenes type stuff. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking like a freaking Reddit community. Like, really, Brian? Yes. Yes, a Reddit community. This is just the beginning of something. And I think it is great for us to take these conversations and invite all quarter lifers into having them together. Everyone's got their own experience, and I think with this whole idea, we're all kind of rowing in different directions right now, trying to figure it out on our own. But I think where the real power and where real clarity for all of us comes is when we kind of put our heads together and start rowing in the same direction. And so that's kind of the idea of this Reddit. So again, would really appreciate if you're a quarter lifer and are still here listening. Would love for you to join that. Also, as I end every episode, I want to say don't try to remember it all. Everything that Sam and I talked about, there's a lot there. So pick like the 1 to 2 things that really stood out to you and try and act on those. I think if you don't turn these things into action, then you just entertain yourself for an hour, which is fine. But if you're going for change, then okay, how can we act on these things? And it doesn't have to be crazy either. It can just be something simple. Lastly, if you're still here to the very, very end, appreciate it. And I'd love for you to like, subscribe, give me a 5-star rating on whatever you're listening to this on. If it's deserving of that, don't give me a bullshit rating. Also follow Quarter Life Clarity on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all that stuff. Seriously, would be great if you could do that and you think it's deserving of that. But more than that, if you got something out of this episode, if you enjoyed it, I'd love for you to send it to a friend. That's really how I want this thing to grow is people helping people, quarter lifers helping quarter lifers. So that friend that you just thought of that comes to mind of, oh, I could send this to them. They might get value out of it. I would say to do it. That's really, we need to have more of a conversation on all this stuff. And I think that's just an easy way to spread this message. So yeah, thank you again for being here, for caring about this whole thing, for participating in Quarter Life Clarity. And yeah, till next time.